Now, because you have looked at the handout and taken a quiz, you should be very knowledgeable about standards of proof, right?
Right.
Well, we're going to learn about standards of proof. So you see here the scales of justice, which is supposed to symbolize the weighing of evidence to determine guilt, right? That's what the scales of justice are about. I have brought my own scales of justice today. I'm kind of a visual person. I think, to be able to see things visually is always a good thing. So I brought my scales of justice. Now, I'm going to make sure that you understand that these aren't terribly accurate. I mean, like, you wouldn't want to weigh your cocaine in them or anything. But they'll work for our purposes today, right? So this is going to be our evidence pan, which right now is empty. And I've just got a little bit of ballast in here. But this is our evidence pan. This is what we're going to be looking at, right? We're going to have a visual of what these different standards of proof would look like in a scale. Does that make sense? Yeah. So let's begin with our standards of proof chart. Standards of proof chart. So we have the standards of proof, and we have the criminal justice activities, the thing that you can do with each of those, right? What you can do, what the standard is, and what you can do with each of those. So let's walk through these. Let's start from low to high. Good? Low to high. So let's begin with mere suspicion. Mere suspicion is a feeling that something is wrong without being able to state exactly what it is. It's just a funny gut feeling. You ever have one of those? You know something's wrong, but it's at such a low level you can't even put it into words. Or something's bothering me about that guy, but I don't know what it is. Have you ever done that? Something's bothering me about this situation, but I don't know what it is. It's just a funny gut feeling. Is there anything that you can do as a police officer with nothing more than just a funny gut feeling that you can't even put into words? There isn't. So on the scales of justice, mere suspicion looks like that. It's empty. There's not anything there. Because you just got a funny feeling. Now, future officers, don't discount that funny feeling. Right? Never discredit your gut instinct. You are not being paranoid. Your body can pick up some vibrations, some better than others, and if something deep inside you says that something's not right about a person or a situation, trust it and keep pushing. Right? In other words, don't dismiss that funny gut feeling. You work in the criminal justice field, you learn real fast that those funny gut feelings mean something. That there's a reason you're feeling that, and you should know that too. Right? As regular citizens, if you've got a funny feeling about something, there's a reason for it. Keep watching. Step back. Pay attention. Now, if you're a police officer, what you're hoping for is if you sit back and watch, because there's nothing else that you can do, hopefully the situation will develop into a level of evidence where you can take some action. So that would be the next standard of proof. Reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion is suspicion that includes the ability to express the reasons for the suspicion. It has reached a level that is high enough, now you can put it into words. And that's all you need to do. It's not a very high level of proof. It's not a very high level of proof at all. But you can put it into words now. So let's say it's July and it's 90 degrees outside and you see this guy here. What's wrong with this picture?
Oh.
Yeah, is he a little bit overdressed for a 90-degree July day? Huh. Why is he dressed that way?
Covering something up.
So are we suspicious? Yes, we are. And as the situation develops, well, we were justified in our suspicion, right? Now we got Freddy the Flasher. Yeah, he was covering something up. Suspicion that includes the ability to express the reasons for the suspicion. What can we do with reasonable suspicion?
Frisk.
Frisk and stop. All right, so first let's stop. We can stop. We can question suspicious subjects about their activities. Now, I don't downhill ski, I cross-country ski. But I'm pretty sure if you downhill ski or cross-country ski, you would not do it in a suit and tie. I'm pretty sure about that. So if I see a guy in a suit and tie wearing a ski mask, hiding his identity, well, I'm probably going to want to talk to him. I'm probably going to be very interested in why he is wearing a ski mask with his suit and tie outside the bank. So I'm going to stop him and question this suspicious person about his activity. With reasonable suspicion, I can do that. With reasonable suspicion, I can also frisk. If I believe that that person might have a weapon on them, to protect myself, I can frisk them for weapons. Just weapons, nothing else. The courts have allowed officers to protect themselves, so you can frisk him, pat him down for weapons to protect yourself. Yes, sir.
Let's say during a stop and frisk, you find like an ounce of weed in somebody's pocket. Can't do anything about it, or?
Hold the phone. We will get into that in great detail when we get into the Fourth Amendment, but I don't want to go there today. But good question. So all we're looking for is weapons. We're questioning suspicious persons about their activities. We're patting them down for weapons. Does that make sense? So let's look at, let me see if we can make some reasonable suspicion in our scale of justice here. All right. Look at that, it barely moved. It barely moved. That's reasonable suspicion. It's not a very high level of suspicion. All you have to do is be able to put it into words. And you can write in your police report, why did you stop that person? You can write in your police report, why did you pat him down? That's all you got to do. It's not a very high standard of proof. The next standard is what I like to call the police officer standard, because it governs, well, really most of what police do. It's called probable cause. Probable cause. We're going to define probable cause as proof necessary for a reasonably intelligent person. Which is who? Who is a reasonably intelligent person? What is a reasonably intelligent person? Who? What? A judge? Well, I hope so.
People of society, like somebody who's graduated high school or
Certain level of education, certain age.
The officer.
Well, we hope the officer is reasonably intelligent. We gave him a badge and a gun. But develop what you're saying there, Ben, a little bit. Who is reasonably intelligent? Are you reasonably intelligent? Well, were you reasonably intelligent before you graduated high school? Because as it turns out, intelligence and education really aren't very well correlated. Yeah, I mean, I know people with master's degrees that are idiots. And I know some really bright people that never graduated high school, right? So education and intelligence, not necessarily the same thing. But intelligence.
Mainly knows right from wrong. It's kind of.
Well, that gets into morality then. But what's reasonably intelligent? Are you all reasonably intelligent people?
Yeah.
I hope so.
I'd say so, yeah.
I hope so. Yes, you are. You are what the law calls a reasonably intelligent person. We all are. Okay, a reasonably intelligent person, or sometimes you hear this termed reasonable person, is somebody that falls in the middle of the continuum between developmentally disabled and rocket scientist genius. So if you are not developmentally disabled, and you are not a rocket scientist genius, and you're someplace in the middle there, you are what the courts refer to as a reasonably intelligent person. In other words, the average regular person, the average John Q. or Jane Q. citizen, you and me and everybody else we know probably, right? Yeah, reasonably intelligent person. So proof necessary for you or me, the average person, to believe that a crime has been committed. based on what you see or heard, you believe that a crime has been committed. Or that items connected with crime can be found in a particular place. Items connected with crime can be found in a particular place. So, probable cause is proof necessary for a reasonably intelligent person to believe that a crime has been committed or that items connected with crime can be found in a particular place. So if you look at the little diagram here, you see Perry the purse snatcher. And he snatches the lady's purse and he takes off running. And it's February in Michigan and there's this stuff called snow on the ground. So he leaves tracks. Now, reasonably intelligent people, is it reasonable to believe that if we follow those tracks, we might find maybe the empty purse, maybe Perry himself, who knows, right? Is that reasonable? Yeah. If we follow those tracks, we might find all of the above. We might find Perry with the purse. We might find that he's thrown the purse away and just taken the money. We might find evidence linking him to the crime, right? His little fingerprinties all over a purse. And so, yeah, we follow the tracks and there we go. Probable cause also isn't an incredibly high level of proof. Nope. All you have to do is believe that a crime has been committed or that items connected with crime can be found in a particular place. And so, look at here. We've got this guy that's had his head beat in, and we've got the guy with the bloody hand and the bloody stick. Cause, effect. Victim, criminal. With probable cause, we can search. And we have to have probable cause to search. With probable cause, what's the next thing we can do? Seize. Seize. We can search. We can seize. What's the next thing? Arrest. We can arrest. And the final thing that we can do with probable cause?
Get a warrant.
Get a search warrant or an arrest warrant, right? Search, seize, arrest, get a warrant. We can do those four things with probable cause. We have to have probable cause to do those four things. So let's put some probable cause in the pan here. All right, that moved a little bit, didn't it? Okay, we dropped our scale a little bit more. Yeah, we'll go like that. So, you know, like maybe 30-70, 35-65, like that. Maybe even 60-40. That'd be probable cause. Yeah? Does that make sense? So again, kind of the police officer's standard of proof because it governs most of what police officers do. Next up, whoops, wait a minute. Got ahead of myself here. There is one other thing that you can do with probable cause, but it's not for police officers, it's for the courts. But it's the preliminary exam in the district court. We'll talk about that more in the future. I forgot to put that in there. We'll talk about that in the future. All right, so now, next up, preponderance of evidence. Preponderance of evidence. Preponderance of evidence refers to evidence that outweighs opposing evidence. That's it. One person has more evidence than the other person. So preponderance of evidence is essentially he who has the most evidence wins. That's it. So if I put preponderance of evidence in the scale here, that's going to drop us down to where this pan is a little bit, there we go, a little bit lower than that one, but not a lot. Can you see that, how this pan is a little bit lower now? Not a lot, just a little bit. So it can be a 60-40 split with the weight of the evidence here, 60%, 40%. It can be a 30-70. It could be a 49-51. He who has the most evidence wins. Now you've all seen this and don't even realize it. It is the standard of proof for civil liability, lawsuits. And it doesn't matter if there are big lawsuits with hundreds of thousands of dollars at stake, millions of dollars at stake, or little lawsuits, what we call small claims, which you have seen on TV. Everybody here, I'm certain, has watched Judge Judy, Judge Joe Brown, Judge Maybelline, Judge somebody or other. And that's what you're looking at, is small claims civil lawsuits. You got two people, one person said this person owes them money or did something to them and blah, 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 wah, 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 right? And they come to court to have the judge decide. He who has the most evidence wins. Right? And you've all seen this. This is how it goes. This guy over here goes, and this guy over here goes, And then Judge Judy says, show me the evidence. And this guy over here just goes, and this guy over here says, receipts, photographs, witnesses. And Judge Judy says, oh, well, you have more evidence. You win. And that's exactly how that works. You've seen it how many times, right? That's exactly what's going on there. He who has the most evidence wins. So the person that produces the evidence, the judge rules on their behalf. And that is preponderance of evidence. So civil liability or lawsuits. Also, if you want to claim successfully insanity in the Michigan courts. Now, let's clarify insanity. Everybody thinks insanity and mentally ill are the same thing. Oh no, not even close. Right? You can be mentally ill without being insane. I'm going to guess, though, that if you're insane, you probably are really mentally ill. Insanity means that you are so checked out of reality that you don't even know what you're doing is wrong. That if there was a police officer standing in the room when you were doing that thing, you'd have still kept doing it. So you got the guy that stabs his wife 39 times, you know, stabby, 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 stabby. Hi, police officer. Stabby, 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 stabby. Okay, right? That's pretty checked out. Would you agree? That's insanity. Now, if somebody wants to make the claim of insanity, it's not a plea. If there is no insanity plea, it's a defense. It's an affirmative defense. So the defense attorney says, hell yeah, he stabbed his wife 39 times. Want to see pictures? We got him. We're not disputing what he did. But we're saying that he didn't understand that it was a wrong thing when he did it. And so they produced the evidence by preponderance of the evidence that this guy is that whacked out. The prosecutor proves that the guy isn't whacked out, right? And the judge rules based on preponderance of evidence. Does that make sense? Yeah. Waiver of assistance of counsel. You have a Sixth Amendment right to an attorney in a criminal case. I would advise you to use that right, exercise that right. But every once in a while you get some ding-dong that thinks that they know the law. I know the law, I don't need no stinking attorney, not me. I want to represent myself. Well, if the judge can be convinced by preponderance of the evidence that you are of sound mind, that you are not making your decision under any kind of coercion or duress, then the judge will let you go ahead and be stupid. Yeah, because that's kind of what that is. If it pleases the court, I will be defending myself in Goldfish versus Black Cat. For your court papers, you might come across this when you're in court. If somebody is representing themselves, you're going to tell me that this is called in pro per or pro se. In pro per or pro se. I am, by the way, giving you all of the answers today on the first page of your court worksheet number 1. Yep, when we're going over the standards of proof here, I'm giving you all of those answers. You got them. In pro per or pro se means representing oneself. So we're going to go ahead and let you be stupid. Next up, the good faith exception. Good faith. Now we're not going to get into this in any detail here, but long story made short, if there was an error made, say on a search warrant or something like that, and the police officer didn't know that there was an error and was just basically reading and following the directions when they executed that search warrant, the judge, if it can be shown that was the case by preponderance of evidence, will still allow the evidence to come in. We'll talk about that more in the future. Inevitable discovery. This says that even though the evidence was gotten illegally, in a way that it shouldn't have happened, if it can be shown by preponderance of the evidence that that evidence would have surfaced anyway by legal means, right, inevitably, it's going to happen, that evidence was going to come up anyway by legal means, the judge will still let it in. And then we have the motion to suppress evidence. Okay, so you believe that evidence that is being used against you in a criminal case should not be, that it was illegally gotten and it should be thrown out. Then you file a motion to suppress, and the judge makes the ruling on that motion based on preponderance of the evidence. On your courtroom experience papers, you have a district court sample paper. And in that district court sample paper, read it, you'll see the story of a case of a motion to suppress evidence. Yep. So these are all court things. We're out of the law enforcement realm now. We're into court. These are all court things. From this point on, it's all court. Does this make sense? Okay, he who has the most evidence wins, right? In all of these different things, he who has the most evidence wins. So far, so good? Right. Clear and convincing evidence. Clear and convincing evidence. I bet you've never even heard of that one before. Most people haven't. Because it's not, I mean, you don't use it on TV. They would never use it on TV because it deals with stuff that, you know, you wouldn't put on TV because it would be boring. Clear and convincing evidence is evidence indicating a thing is highly probable or reasonably certain. Evidence indicating a thing is highly probable or reasonably certain. So if we look at our little evidence pan here, add a little bit more. All right, and we see it goes down a little bit more now. So now we got like more of a 70-30 split this way, maybe even an 80-20. Clear and convincing evidence is used for federal insanity. You think it's difficult to make an insanity case in a state court? Try it in federal court. It is the standard of proof for paternity and child custody. So mostly you're going to see this kind of stuff in your family courts, probate courts. For juvenile delinquency. For probate wills. All stuff that you're going to see in the family courts and the probate courts here. And, you know, you're probably never going to see a federal insanity case. But you can kind of understand why you've never heard of it before. Because they wouldn't show anything like that on TV. It would just, you know, be snoozer doodles. Beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt. Have we all heard of that before? Evidence that moves things beyond any reasonable doubt. Evidence that erases most doubt short of absolute certainty. So let me ask you this, just for a minute, let's forget about the beyond part. Let's focus on the two words, reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt. What do those two words mean, reasonable doubt? If you had reasonable doubt, what would that mean? Okay, good guess, not what I'm looking for.
You have good reason to believe that something might not be true.
Good reason to believe that something might not be true. Yeah, that's pretty close. So let's say I'm going to pick on Ben here. Ben has a girlfriend. Yep. They're living together in sin. Without the benefit of marriage. That's okay, everybody does that nowadays. All right, so Ben tells his girlfriend, it's Friday night, girlfriend, don't wait up for me. Go ahead and go to bed because I'm going to go out with some of the men in my Intro to Criminal Justice class and we've got a study group going. Yes, we're going to study very, very hard because there's an exam coming up and Whitaker's exams are really tough. So we're getting a study group together. We're going to study really hard for this exam. So girlfriend goes, okay, honey, I won't wait up. Have a nice night. So Ben goes out, and he sure does meet up with some of the men in his criminal justice class, but not to study criminal justice. No, no. They go down to the bar district in Bay City, and they go down there to study beer. Yep. So they come into the first bar, and they study a couple of beers. Yes, this is very nice, glug, glug. This is very nice also, glug, glug. They go to the next bar, and they study a couple more beers, glug, 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 glug. They go to the next bar, because there's a lot of bars in our bar district. Yeah, it's called Little Bourbon Street. They go to the next bar, glug, 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 glug. So they're studying pretty hard, would you say? Yeah. Now, they're just studying beer straight up, and they finally come to a bar. It's late enough in the night, the band has started to play, you know? The band is playing, and there's dancing going on the dance floor, and Ben's not really much of a dancer, so he's just sitting there studying some more beer. And this beautiful woman comes up, and she bats her eyes at Ben and says, hi there. Hi there, would you like to dance with me? I'd love to dance with you. And she grabs him by the hand and pulls him off the bar stool and out onto the dance floor. Now, Ben is a loyal and faithful man, and he would never do anything that would cause his girlfriend to think that he was disloyal, right? But he figures, what's the harm? It's a fast dance. So they're out there doing their fast dance thing, and the song ends. So Ben turns to leave, the music turns slow, and this girl grabs him, pulls him in close and tight, throws her arms around him, and starts swaying to the music with Ben. And then, even though Ben's like, oh no, I'm not liking this, I need to leave. And then she starts to nuzzle his neck. And then she licks his earlobe. And Ben is like, whoa, I am out of here. I'm sorry, lady. He pushes her away. I've got a girlfriend and I am loyal and faithful. I'm sorry. Right? So he gets up and he leaves. He goes back to studying beer. Well, after a while, the night ends. And Ben comes home, and he's been studying quite a lot of beer, so it's hard for him to walk. You know how that goes. So he stumbles into the house and makes a little more noise than he planned, and he wakes up girlfriend, who is so happy to see him. Oh, Ben, oh, honey, I'm glad you're home. How did your study group go? And Ben goes, oh, yeah, real good, real good. Oh, I'm so happy to see you. And she throws her arms around Ben to give him a kiss, and she goes, Ben? Ben, why do I smell women's perfume on you? Ben, why do you have women's lipstick on your collar? Ben! Now, do you think right about now that girlfriend has some reasonable doubt as to the veracity, the truth of the story that he has told her about a study group with criminal justice guys? Do you think that she is doubting his story? Do you think that it is reasonable for her to doubt that story? It is. And that is precisely what reasonable doubt is. Thank you, Ben. That is what reasonable doubt is. Something gives you the cause to doubt the story that is being told to you. So that's what makes this a very high standard of evidence, because we have to take that evidence and show so much evidence that it moves you beyond any reasonable doubt you could possibly have. Now, you could have unreasonable ones, like, you know, UFOs, or, you know, the evil twin brother that's been living in Germany for the last 20 years, or, you know, something like that. You could have unreasonable doubts. But all of the reasonable ones have been erased. Does that make sense? That's why it's beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond being the key word. Beyond the reasonable doubt is the standard of proof for guilt in a criminal trial. Guilt in a criminal trial. It's a very high standard of proof. And it looks, in our scales of justice here, it looks like that. You see that scale? That's not going down any further. That's as far as that sucker goes. The scale of justice is down as far as it goes. That is beyond a reasonable doubt. Guilt in a criminal trial. Now notice the word criminal is italicized because guilt in a civil trial is a different standard, is it not? What is the standard again for guilt in a civil trial? Preponderance of evidence, 2 standards lower, right? A showing of evidence. So beyond a reasonable doubt, well, that's all the way down here. Yep. And it's important to make that distinction because if you look at O.J. Simpson, remember O.J.? Yeah, I love O.J. I get so much mileage out of his case. Okay, O.J. Simpson is convicted in a criminal court in California of murdering his wife and her lover, Ronald Goldman. Yep. Well, no, I lied. He was not convicted. He was found not guilty. Yeah, my bad. All right, he was found not guilty in a court of law based on evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay, so they tried to show all this evidence that O.J. was guilty. But O.J. was a very wealthy man. He had been a sports figure, made a lot of money, a lot of endorsements, television ads, things like that, made a lot of money. So he was able to afford what is probably arguably the best legal team ever in American jurisprudence. And they earned their money. What they set about doing in that trial was creating reasonable doubt, poking as many holes as possible in the testimony and evidence of the prosecution. Now maybe you remember the old, if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. There was that. But the big thing that they did was to discredit the prosecution's star witness, Detective Mark Fuhrman. They discredited him by bringing up the fact that Detective Fuhrman was a racist. And they showed irrefutable evidence, a lot of it, that showed Mr. Fuhrman was a racist. So what they're basically saying is, well, isn't it possible that things really didn't go down the way that Detective Fuhrman says? And isn't it possible because he's a racist, he planted evidence on my client who is black? Isn't that possible? And the jury's like, well, you know what? That is possible. Now that raises a reasonable doubt. Do you see how that works? That's what they're trying to do, is put any reasonable doubt that they can in the mind of the juror, so the juror says, yeah, I don't know if I'm believing the story that's been told to me. I'm believing that there might be another side to the story. There might be things that we're not being told. There might be something else going on, but I'm not believing anymore the whole story that I'm being told. And that's all it takes, is a little bit of reasonable doubt. The law says that if a juror has a reasonable doubt, even if they truly believe the person is guilty, if they have that reasonable doubt, they must enter a not guilty verdict. They must. So later, they polled all of the jurors on O.J.'s case. And all of them said, hey, yeah, we thought he did it, but there was reasonable doubt introduced. And we weren't able to completely believe the story that was told to us by the prosecution. We had some doubts. You see how that works? Now, O.J. walks free. Gets away with murder, basically. Yep. The families are not done. They haul him into civil court and sue him. All of the evidence that was used in the criminal case that was not enough to convict him based on beyond a reasonable doubt was enough to meet the standard of proof of preponderance of the evidence. So O.J. lost his civil case, and he lost all of his stuff and his money. That's how that happened. So he had the criminal case he won because the standard of proof is so high. He had the civil case that he lost because the standard of proof in civil cases is much lower. Because in a civil case, you're only going to lose money. In a criminal case, you're going to lose your freedom. You see the difference there? Does that make sense? Okay. Well, there's one more standard of proof, but not really. Not exactly. It's called absolute certainty. Absolute certainty. This is a hypothetical standard aspired to, which scholars agree does not really exist. Nope. Now you say, well, how can that be? I know what I saw. Well, maybe not. Absolute certainty is kind of right up there with unicorns, Puff the Magic Dragon, Lutheran popes, chicken lips, doors on motorcycles, you know, a whole host of other things that don't exist. Yeah, it's not a real thing. We aspire to it. We'd like to think that we can get to absolute certainty, but we can't. Because here's the problem, right? We're human. We depend on our 5 senses, which are fallible. We can make mistakes. Eyewitnesses are notoriously unreliable. I used to do a little experiment in one of my classes where I would have somebody walk in the door and just do something, take something, leave something, and then walk back out. And I would have my 20 or 25 students write a paragraph about what they saw, including a description of the person. And you know what I got? 25 completely different descriptions. The guy would be anywhere from 5'4" to 6'4". He had brown hair, blonde hair, red hair. He had eye color of all over the. He was wearing blue jeans. He was wearing corduroys. He was wearing brown pants. And here are 25 people that were not even under any stress. Now imagine trying to see what you saw when somebody's got a gun pointing in your face. And now you're going to testify later about what you saw in that person's description. It was a gun. It was a big gun. Really big gun. We cannot trust eyewitness statements. Now, we're going to see a movie later on called 12 Angry Men, and that really hammers that point home. But if you want to watch something before then that will also hammer that point home pretty well, treat yourself to My Cousin Vinny. My Cousin Vinny. If you haven't seen it, it's on the must-watch list of criminal justice. It's hilarious, and it makes this point very, very well. That you can't trust eyewitnesses. Human perceptions. Yeah, My Cousin Vinny. Vinny, V-I-N-N-Y. Human perceptions. Yeah, I saw that. Well, okay, what kind of light did you see that in? Was it darkish? Was it dawn? You know, hunters. I know I got a lot of hunters in here, right? Who are my hunters? Yeah. Have you ever seen that big buck just before the light comes up? And then when the light comes up, it's a brushy bush. And you go, oh. You look out there, oh my God, there's a buck. He's got a big rack. Boom, 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 boom goes their heart. And the sun keeps coming up, keeps coming up. Oh man, it's a bush. Everybody's had that happen if you've ever been out hunting, right? So light plays tricks with our eyesight. Fatigue plays tricks with our perceptions. Our eyesight, our hearing, background noise can play tricks with our perceptions. True. When I was a college student, I worked for Sears Security doing undercover retail stuff. And I was down in Lansing at the Frandor Mall. And I had the control room, so I was on the camera panel. And I'm watching a guy that's looking a little bit hinky. He comes in, you know, and he's just, you know, that mere suspicion thing. He's just setting off my bells, and I couldn't say why. But I'm following him around on the camera as he's going through the store, and he's just looking hinky, you know, kind of furtive, looking around and everything. And I can see it's a black and white camera, but I can see that the coat that he's wearing is kind of older looking. And then all of a sudden, I see him drop down below where the camera picks him up. And he's down for a few seconds, and then I see him pop back up. And he's wearing a coat that, to me, even on a black and white screen, looks vastly different. So I got on the radio, and I called it out to all the people that were out walking the floor. So at the door, they hit him at the door. He's past the last point of sale, so he's obviously not going to pay for it. They hit him at the door and engage him in conversation. And he says, oh no, this is my coat. I own this coat. I came in wearing this coat. It's just fairly new. And there were no tags on it or anything, so they let him go. Now, two of the security officers that were working that day were full-time police officers for Lansing PD. And they were doing a part-time gig at Sears. Okay, so they come in and basically they tear me a new one about embarrassing them, stopping this honest, decent man for stealing our merchandise. And I'm like, man, you got to look at the footage. You got to see this. It's straight up. He stole it. So they're looking at the footage, and I'm looking at the footage. We're all three seeing the same footage. And they're like, no, it didn't happen. You know, you're just a dumb college kid. What do you know? Blah, blah, blah. You know, kind of running me down and making me feel kind of bad. But I knew what I saw. I mean, I was going to hold firm. I said, all right, okay, we're in disagreement here. Why don't we go out there on the floor and check it out? So the three of us went out there, and we went over to where the man had ducked down and disappeared. I found his old dirty jacket underneath the clothes rack and tags on the floor. Now, these are two experienced, highly trained professional police officers. And I'm just a dumb college kid, right? And they still didn't see it when they looked at the camera. They still didn't see it. So you tell me how we can have absolute certainty when we depend on fallible human perceptions, right? So as I say, it's not a real standard of proof. It's a hypothetical standard that we aspire to. But the best that we can do is going to be right here. It's going to be beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the best we can do, really. Does that make sense?